It's the 15th of July, 1799, and a group of French soldiers are repairing a fort near the Egyptian town of Rosetta when they uncover something strange. A large dark grey stone, covered in hundreds of intricate characters, carved in a small, precise hand. The commanding officer orders the stone to be excavated, believing it must have some kind of archaeological significance. His instincts are correct. They had discovered the Rosetta Stone, an artifact that would finally unlock the long-forgotten meaning of Egyptian hieroglyphs, and so become probably the most famous piece of stone in the world. But to do this, its inscriptions would need to be deciphered through a complex process of linguistic code breaking. So, how were we able to read the hieroglyphs on the Rosetta Stone? And what exactly did they say? The rediscovery of the Rosetta Stone was wrapped up in complex geopolitical developments. Napoleon invaded Egypt in 1798 as part of the French Revolutionary Wars. 3 years later, Napoleon's armies had been defeated by British and Ottoman forces. The Ottomans regained control of Egypt, while the British made off with all Egyptian antiquities collected by the French. This included the mysterious engraved stone found at Rosetta. Precisely why the French had considered this object so important quickly became apparent to experts in London. The stone was 112 centimetres high, 75 centimetres wide, and 28 thick, weighing approximately 762 kilograms. It was part of an ancient Egyptian stela, the name given to large stone slabs bearing inscriptions, usually displayed in temples. The top of the stela had been fractured, but the base remained in good condition, leaving a large part of the text clear and legible. The stone dated back to the Ptolemaic period, a stretch lasting nearly 300 years, when Macedonian Greek rulers governed Egypt. As a result, the text on the stone had been separated into 3 different scripts: Egyptian hieroglyphs at the top, demotic, a cursive handwritten form of hieroglyphs used in everyday life, in the middle, and Greek, the language of the royal class, at the bottom. The Greek script could be read by scholars. It contained a decree from King Ptolemy V Epiphanes, establishing his endowments of silver and grain to Egyptian temples. In return, the decree stated that the priesthood recognized the divinity of King Ptolemy and pledged to celebrate the king's birthday and coronation days. One passage was of particular interest, a line reading that, "This decree shall be inscribed on a stela of hard stone in sacred, meaning hieroglyphic, and native, meaning demotic, and Greek characters." This was a significant statement. If all 3 scripts conveyed the same passage of text, the known Greek section could be used as a key to decipher the 2 unknown sections. The Rosetta Stone presented a unique linguistic riddle, an ancient and mysterious language that would require years of analysis to solve. Sometimes this is what building a website can feel like. Luckily, Odoo makes it simple. Odoo is an all-in-one management software offering a range of applications that can help you to manage your business, from invoicing and accounting to project management, HR, and much more. Odoo's website app can help you build your own website in just 4 steps. Select the type of site, describe your industry and goals, before choosing from a range of color palettes or adding your logo. Then add pages and features. To finish, select a theme. And just like that, your website is ready to be customized. Odoo makes this easy. The intuitive drag and drop system allows you to seamlessly add blocks in just 1 click. You can upload your own images, change text and edit your typography with integrated Google fonts, and optimize your layout with colors, interactive effects, and animation. And best of all, with Odoo, your first application is free for life, with unlimited hosting and support included, and a free custom domain for 1 year. Click the link in the description to get started. It wasn't the first time someone had attempted to translate hieroglyphs. Knowledge of the ancient language had been lost at some point in the 4th century AD. Since then, Egyptian scholars like Horapollo had attempted to understand hieroglyphs as a kind of mystical and allegorical language. Because hieroglyphs used pictures, it was assumed that their meaning would be symbolic, functioning as logograms, signs that represented specific words, phrases, or ideas. Horapollo speculated, for instance, that the word for sun is written using the picture of a goose, because geese love their offspring more than any other animal. Later translators ran with these ideas, producing fanciful allegorical interpretations.
People were so baffled by them, sometimes Renaissance scholars were trying to decipher hieroglyphic inscriptions which weren't even Egyptian and weren't even hieroglyphic.
Armed with the bilingual script of the Rosetta Stone, academics were determined to avoid the mistakes of their predecessors and finally crack the code of hieroglyphs. Early work centered on the central demotic script. French linguist Sylvestre de Sacy quickly set about studying reproductions of the Rosetta Stone scripts. He used a process of spatial comparison. analysing where sequences appeared and recurred in the Greek and demotic sections to isolate corresponding characters. Another academic, Johann Ackerblad, approached the problem differently. He compared demotic with the Coptic language of later Christian Egypt, hypothesizing that Coptic was a direct descendant of the more ancient demotic, and would therefore contain traces of the older language. By comparing the two, he produced a demotic alphabet with Coptic homophones. While both de Sacy and Ackerblad were not entirely correct in their observations, they did produce some significant results. For instance, they were able to correctly identify the demotic word for Ptolemy. This identification would have a special importance for the next scholar to take up the Rosetta Stone's challenge, Thomas Young. Young was a polymath, a leading physicist, mathematician, and physician who had made important contributions across material science, optics, medicine, and the wave theory of light. In 1814, he turned his prodigal talents to a new and rather different subject, the Rosetta Stone hieroglyphs. Young focused his work on the stone's cartouches, the name given for an oval ring encompassing a sequence of hieroglyphs. It had long been speculated that cartouches might contain royal names. Young proceeded with this idea, noting that the 6 cartouches visible on the Egyptian section might correlate with the name Ptolemy, which appeared 6 times in the latter section of the Greek script. He then set about comparing the hieroglyphs within these cartouches with the demotic translation of the name Ptolemy, posited by de Sacy and Ackerblad. This yielded a series of similarities. The first 2 hieroglyphs represented the P and T of Ackerblad's demotic alphabet. The lion corresponded with the oblique character, whose upright line Young theorized represented a tail. This gave an L or ol. The central characters, he explained, were known to relate to the Coptic letter for M. The 2 feathers matched the 3 parallel lines in the demotic, giving I or E, while the final hieroglyph represented the Coptic she or Greek sigma, giving the sound of an S or os. When read from right to left, we get Ptolemaeos or Ptolemy. Although his workings were not 100% correct, Young had achieved a major breakthrough. For the first time, a sequence of hieroglyphs from the Rosetta Stone had been translated. This translation also demonstrated that hieroglyphs were not wholly symbolic. They could be read phonetically, representing an alphabet used to build a cohesive word or phrase. Crucially, however, Young believed that this case was an exception. He theorized that hieroglyphs had been repurposed to be read phonetically for foreign words, like the Greek name Ptolemy. When used to write Egyptian words, they would revert to their symbolic form, logograms representing concepts or ideas. This left him at a dead end, unable to translate other tracts from the hieroglyphic script. Young had laid important groundwork for the decipherment of the Rosetta Stone, but had failed to provide a holistic theory that could be used to translate the entire hieroglyphic passage. This task would be left to a Frenchman named Jean-François Champollion. Champollion was a leading philologist, a prodigy who could read Arabic, Hebrew, Coptic, and ancient Greek from a young age. He had spent years studying reproductions of the Rosetta Stone, as well as absorbing the academic work that surrounded it. He came to a couple of important conclusions about the nature of hieroglyphs. Firstly, that they were closely related to demotic, which in turn was related to Coptic. Secondly, that hieroglyphs could be read phonetically more often than Thomas Young had proposed. Champollion's breakthrough came in 1822, while studying copies of an inscription from Abu Simbel, containing this cartouche. He knew, from the alphabet originally composed by Thomas Young, that the last 2 hieroglyphs both represented the S sound present in Ptolemaeos. He then turned to the sign on the left, which he interpreted as a representation of the sun, which in Coptic is Ra or Re. This gave him Ra something SS. Champollion was left with the central trident sign. He recognized this sign from the Rosetta Stone, where it related to a Greek phrase meaning day of birth. He knew that day in Coptic was Mise, and took an educated guess that this sign therefore represented the sounds MS. When this was combined, Champollion was able to read Ramses, the name of a well-known ancient Egyptian pharaoh. This was a revelation for Champollion.
The mythology has it that he rushed through the streets of Paris to see his brother, cried out, I've done it, and collapsed in a dead faint for a couple of days.
The breakthrough led Champollion to his defining realization that hieroglyphs could be read phonetically, not just for foreign names like Ptolemy, but for Egyptian words too. With this, he was able to put forward his central thesis.
Hieroglyphic writing is a complex system, a script all at once figurative, symbolic, and phonetic, in one and the same text, in one and the same sentence, and I might even venture, in one and the same word.
After much subsequent work by scholars, Champollion's system of decipherment can be used to read most hieroglyphic inscriptions that have been uncovered. For instance, when Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered in 1922, inscriptions within, such as this cartouche, could be read according to the concepts laid out by Champollion. The top part is phonetic. The semicircle and bird are read as T-U-T. The hooked cross is Ankh, and the three signs at the top read Amun. Conversely, the three signs at the base of the cartouche are ideographic. The first symbol is south or southern. The second represents the ancient Egyptian city of Heliopolis, while the last is a sign meaning ruler. When we combine these phonetic and ideographic hieroglyphs together, we get Tutankhamun, ruler of southern Heliopolis. With this, the principles established by Champollion could be proven, and the long silence surrounding ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs was finally broken. The Rosetta Stone is still in the possession of the British Museum. It is the museum's most popular and probably most iconic object. It is also one of the most controversial. Egyptian archaeologists call for the repatriation of the stone, which they argue was acquired illegally. For now at least, the stone remains on display in the museum's Egyptian Sculpture Gallery, some 2,000 miles away from Egypt, whose ancient culture it was so instrumental in revealing.